Good evening and welcome to Live from the Studio, the Daily Edition. I'm your host, Jimmy Selesky, and I'm trying to sound like Tucker Carlson right now. It's so true. No, I'm going to sound like me now. This is actually what I sound like for those of you just tuning in. Happy Wednesday to you. We didn't start off the show with music today. Sometimes I don't feel like starting off the show with music. Is that okay? If you got a problem with that, you can go ahead and switch channels right now, buddy. Okay? Glad to be here. I want to talk about a couple things today. I obviously have to address this most recent clip circulating through the interspace of politics. And that, of course, is this Palestinian protest in Dearborn, Michigan. Colloquially known as the Jihad capital of the world. That's a great little sign to put on the interstate on the way into town. Welcome to Dearborn, Michigan, the Jihad capital of the world. That's almost as fun as when my family goes out to our little family farmhouse out in Western Maryland, just outside of Paw Paw, West Virginia, and you cross into town and there's a sign that says, Paw Paw, West Virginia, home of Josh DeLauder. And then I looked up who Josh DeLauder is, or John DeLauder, and he is the West Virginia all-time high school scoring champ for basketball. So Paw Paw, West Virginia, population 503, is the home of West Virginia's all-time high school basketball scorer, John DeLauder. And that's cool. But that's not quite as cool as Dearborn, Michigan, the Jihad capital of the world. I mean, you're beating out a lot of different Jihad capitals. Maybe it's just the Jihad capital of America. Let's not get overzealous, Dearborn, Michigan. I have a hunch that there are some other cities around this here world that may give you a running for Jihad capital status. But at least for America, let's settle on that. So we'll talk about that. I also want to talk about Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner's daughter has come out as trans. She came out as trans at her grandfather's funeral / prayer service, whatever those Hollywood people do. It's always got to be something different. So it can't just be a funeral. It has to be something else. So I don't know what they called it, but it was some type of service for her deceased grandfather. And this was the moment to announce to the world and family, grieving relatives, that she is trans. So we'll discuss that a little bit. I also kind of want to just quickly tap into a comment that was left on yesterday's video by one of our day ones, Budgie. I can't find it, Budge. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe it got deleted, or sometimes YouTube just doesn't let me see comment. I don't understand it, but luckily I saw it for a second and I remember the gist, and it was about aliens, because we talked a little bit about aliens yesterday, and how we kind of disagree. I kind of disagree and have my own concepts of what I think an alien looks like. And it probably differs from everyone else's version. And Budgie brought up a good point that aliens could be information. So I'm going to try to dig back in the archives, the annals of my own mind, for this 1 second when I saw this comment that I can no longer seem to find. But it stuck with me. And we'll talk about just what that might mean if aliens were information. We'll try to make sense of that as well. And of course, as always on this show, folks, really, I would say probably the reason anybody watches this at all. Because as I've come to find, it's certainly not to watch me ramble. It's got to be the Rook Look. The Rook Look is where I, Jimmy the Rook Selesky, known and feared gambler throughout Vegas and the world as a whole. Dearborn, Michigan may be the Jihad capital of America, but right here in Baltimore, Maryland, at the studio, that is the gambling capital of America. Basically, wherever I am is the sports gambling capital of the world. because I bestow upon you my sports gambling picks of the day. We are bringing back the running tally. Last week was kind of a weird week, obviously, with the move out and everything. I gave you guys some pointers. I pushed you guys in certain directions, but nothing that officially went on the books. And don't think that that's me cheating, because it's not. Because actually, if I decided to count my picks from last week, I'd actually be up. I know we kind of blew it in the championship game. Purdue did not cover plus 6.5. The over 143.5 did not hit. However, as you remember, my bracket predictions were correct for that, with Purdue and UConn winning. But if you recall, I also in the Final Four matchups told you that Purdue's line, according to me, was -8, and UConn's line versus Alabama was -7.5. Both of those hit. So I'm not going to get, complicated with it. I'm not going to get persnickety about it. I'm just going to say, look, we're going to pick back up the Rook looks where we left it a couple Fridays ago. We are currently sitting at 12.15 units in the positive. That's right, newcomers. You heard that correctly. 12.15 units in the positive after just 63 official bets on the book. That is a positive 19.29% yield. Hold up. Should I say that again? Rewind that. That is a positive 19.29% yield. Pause. That's a lot. So, if you want to hear what my picks are today, I recommend sticking around, watching the show, or just going into the description and seeing what I typed out as the Rook looks today and skipping this show entirely, which, you can do in theory. But don't. Come on. Don't. So let's dip into the first thing. This is a protest that happened over the weekend. It was a speech in protest of everyone's favorite global conflict at the moment, perhaps the hottest global conflict of the year. Israel versus Palestine, head to head. And this is, I guess, a Palestinian guy. I don't know. But this does take place in Dearborn, Michigan. The what? The jihad capital of the world. Woohoo! Bring your kids on down to Dearborn, Michigan. I went to Dearborn, Michigan this summer, and all I got was this lousy shirt. Fun times. So this is a segment of that speech.
Malcolm X said, and I quote, "We live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth. It's not Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and such devilry to happen and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth."
Such a system does not deserve to exist? Come on, man. Lighten up a little bit. Sheesh. No, that, of course, the primary part of that clip was not the things that he says necessarily. That's all stuff we've heard. Malcolm X said this. America is the rottenest, most evil place in the world. These are things we're used to hearing basically every day. As we know, America is, of course, the worst country in the world. This may surprise you because on the surface and according to every available metric, America is like one of the best countries in the world. And by one of the best, I mean the best. But actually, America is the worst country in the world. And just remember that. And I'm glad people like this guy and his audience are there to remind us that not only are we the worst country in the world, but we're so bad. We are so bad that there needs to be an overthrowing of the entire system. It's not enough to take Genocide Joe. Is that what he calls him? Genocide Joe? I don't mind that one. Hey, even a broken clock is right twice a day. I like that. It's not enough to oust Genocide Joe and the neo-Dems. Neo-Dem isn't a term, but I'm coining that term now because we have neocons, which are like the old-fashioned, unimaginative, boring conservative Republicans, Mitch McConnell and the like. And then you have the neo-Dems, which is not a thing, but that's the old-fashioned, run-of-the-mill, milquetoast, boring Democrats on the left. You know, the ones that aren't radical revolutionaries. Just your everyday Chuck Schumer, good old-fashioned corrupt politicians the way God intended. Do a little insider trading, couple speaking fees here and there, some under-the-table deals, some backroom things. Classic politics. None of this new school, we care about all this stuff. None of this new fashion, we need to change the world. Not all that. Just good old-fashioned get in, get your money, get out when you're 98 years old. Classic politicians. Those are the neo-Dems. But it's not enough to just get rid of them. We have to get rid of the country. I could be mistaken, but when you say death to America, and the audience in unison agrees. See, it would be one thing if it was like one crazy guy in the audience that was like, got a little too riled up. Like everyone else was like kind of vibing. They were like, yeah, Malcolm X did say that. Hell yeah. Genocide Joe, ooh. And then one guy got a little too fired up and he was like, yeah, man, death to America. And everybody's like, all right, dude. All right. Hey, let's not get carried away. You know, I'm digging the whole Genocide Joe thing. I like it. I'm liking the quotes. I'm liking the passion. But, you know, let's reel it in a little bit. No, the crowd was like, yeah, actually, death to America. Death to America. What does that mean? Well, I'm no English to English translator. But if my memory serves me as a fairly fluent English speaker, that implies that the country of America shall die, should die. Death to America. Is that simply the system of America that needs to die? Is it the people that needs to die? The culture that needs to die? Well, America is all of those things. It is not just a political system. It is a culture. It is a culture. American culture is a thing. Okay? It is a people as Americans. And the term death to America would imply that all of that is inherently bad. Now, this is particularly ironic, I would say, for obvious reasons. I don't believe I'm breaking any new ground by suggesting that the fact that this here speech is taking place in America is evidence in and of itself, the sheer hypocrisy of the statement. Now, I don't know what country this dude is from. I'm going to assume Palestine, I guess. I would imagine everyone in the crowd is either a Palestinian or a 33-year-old white woman with no children, who you know, placates to her maternal instinct by getting overly involved in other people's political causes. That makes up probably most protests, right? The people that are affected make up about 15% of the protests, and then the other 85% is completely uninvolved, unaffected, privileged, liberal white people who want desperately to be a part of something. So there you have that. That's what I'm going to assume was in this crowd. Maybe a little bit less on the ratio, but about that. The hypocrisy of saying death to America in America. It's kind of like your bratty teenager who's like 15 years old, and it's like, fuck you, I hate you, Dad. I hate you. You're ruining my life. You're ruining my life, Dad. I hate you guys. Meanwhile, you have your room and you sleep there with a roof over your head and food to eat and get driven everywhere you need to go because you can't drive, and you're completely taken care of. And you're saying, fuck you, Dad, to probably the only guy in the world who you could say that to without getting immediately punched in the face. Because if you walked around the street and just walked up to most other dudes, grown men, and just went, fuck you, buddy, you suck, you're the worst, and just laid it on thick, there probably would be a point pretty early in that conversation where you got punched in the face. But because you're a 14-year-old bratty teenager in your parents' house, you can say all those things and still have a roof over your head, still have food to eat, still get to do whatever you want to do, and say all those things and kind of get away with it. I mean, obviously, if your parents are the type to beat your ass, which I cannot recommend enough, then you will get smacked around a little bit. But also, if your parents are the type to beat your ass and make it known who's boss and how things are going to be around here, then I guarantee you wouldn't say, fuck you, Dad, in the first place. Because I didn't when I was a kid that I can remember. Because I already had my ass pre-beaten. I already knew what the end result of that situation was going to be. I didn't need to stick the fork in the outlet. But that's what it reminds me of. It's really just a lack of gratitude. And I'm not saying that these people don't have a legitimate cause here. I'm not even talking about Israel right now. Okay? I don't feel like I necessarily have to in order to make the point that I'm making. Two things can be true at the same time. You may disagree with Israel's policies in this conflict. You may disagree with America's involvement in this conflict, aiding Israel, whatever else is going on. However, when you then say something like death to America in a crowd of people that all unanimously pretty much in unison agree with that sentiment, that is a totally different thing. Now, I believe in free speech. I don't think this should be illegal. Exactly what about America do you want to die? Now, I could be tripping here, but I couldn't help but notice that you live here. And I don't imagine that you were forced to come here. Now, one could argue that you were forced to come here because your own country sucks so bad that you would rather move to this hellhole, rotten to its core, racist, oppressive country that is America that needs to die. But even with all that said, it was still worth it to come here to a place where your language is not the first language, your culture is not the primary culture. You don't really know anybody, you're leaving your family and friends behind across the globe. And all that was worth it because this country of America just so happens, even though it is the worst and needs to die, it's just ever so slightly better than Gaza. The thought process here doesn't make sense to me. There are places in the world where it would be death to you if you said this about where you were. I would imagine that would probably be the case in your own country. I would imagine that if you held a protest in Palestine. Let's do a thought experiment. What do you think would happen? Because we hear a lot about the Israel-Palestinian conflict. You know, we hear a lot about how, you know, not all Palestinians are terrorists, which I obviously agree with. But you have Hamas that's kind of leading, is the face of that side of the conflict versus, you know, Israel, whatever. So right now you're in America and you're criticizing the leader of America as it stands right now, genocide Joe Biden, and you're saying he needs to go, but not just that, this entire system, this entire thing that we have in place, this entire country is rotten to its core and needs to go. Let's pretend. Old Airplanes Part 2 version. Let's pretend. Marshall Mathers, let's pretend that you instead were in your own country. And you decided to get a little fun, little shindig, little protest. Well, we're all LARPing as revolutionaries. And, you know, you got everybody out there and you got up on your mic and you said, the Malcolm X said, or whatever your Palestinian equivalent would be there. Mahmoud X says that Palestine is rotten to its core and that the genocidal Hamas needs to go. But not just that, this entire rotten system, this entire rotten group that is controlling our country, Hamas, needs to die. Death to Palestine, death to Hamas. What do you think would happen there? No, honestly, what do you think would happen? Do you think it would just be a clip on the news that the Hamas White House would be commentating on via their horrible press secretary? Well, you know, the president believes that, you know, this rhetoric does not completely add up to hate speech, but you know, we do recognize the sentiments of these people, and we just want to make sure that everyone understands that we hear you. And that's not what would happen. That's what happens here in this horrible, shitty, oppressive, death-deserving country. In your country, there would be death to you before you even finished that speech. I can't help but imagine otherwise. And we probably would never see that because everyone already understands that, just like the kid who already got his ass beaten and never then got out of line by saying fuck you to his father and got his ass beaten. The Palestinians already know we're not about to step up and say shit like that about Hamas because we already know what the hell's going to happen. So great. Your country, not ideal. Not saying anything about the people, not saying anything about anything other than, look, let's be objective here. Palestine, America, you know, let's not waste any time with that deliberation. But you come here to a country that welcomes you in. And then you spend your time talking about how much it sucks and how much it needs to die. How does that make sense? Now, in the example I used before, that was you in your own country saying that about your own country. I didn't even bother venturing into what would happen if I went over to your country and said that. I don't even think I'd make it up on stage. So the comparison is insane. There is no relativism here. There just isn't. There is a way to criticize the country that you live in while still recognizing how lucky you are to live here. And that is the difference, I think, in large part between the modern era and our grandparents' era. Because people talk all the time, diversity is our strength, blah, 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 blah. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think diversity can be strength. I don't think that it automatically is. You know, diversity doesn't appear to be a strength in basketball. I feel like 7-foot black guys pretty much got basketball covered. I don't know if we need a 5'7" balding Jewish guy on the New York Knicks. I think we're just fine. You know, maybe a couple Serbian white guys every here and there, but for the most part, diversity does not really appear to be a major strength in basketball, in the NBA, let's say. And there's plenty of places we can point to that seem to be like, you know what? I think what really is your strength is finding the best people for the job and not limiting yourself to only one group, because that's really the difference. If you're finding the best people for any given job, that is your best lineup. It's just that simple. If you are limiting your selection based off of, well, I don't want those people in here, I don't want them, then now you're not picking the best person for the job, and now diversity or lack thereof has become a weakness because you're refusing to allow in other qualified people of other groups because, you know, you're discriminating against them. But the opposite of that is also not necessarily a strength at all. When you're overlooking whether or not people are actually qualified or deserving of a position and then taking them in anyway, regardless of their qualification, because your primary focus is diversity over, merit. And that goes for everything, not just jobs, but immigration. Okay? My grandparents are immigrants. On my Greek side, my grandparents came here when they were teenagers from Greece, you guessed it. And they are extremely stoked to be American. Like extremely stoked, and were extremely stoked. So extremely stoked that it was very common that when you came to America from Greece, in the case of my grandfather, and you had a name like Dimitris, and you rolled up on Ellis Island, and they went, "What's your name?" And he goes, Demetrius. And they're like, "Yeah, I don't know about that, buddy. How about James?" And he was like, "Whatever you say, bucko. I'm just glad to be here. Thanks for having me." And now his name is legally James. I'm named after my grandfather. My legal name is Demetrius. Everyone calls me Jimmy. My grandfather, who was born in Greece, named Demetrius, is legally named James. I'm the only person with the Greek name of Demetrius in my family. And I was born here. Why? Because back then, they were just glad to be here. Change my name, change the spelling of my last name. I don't give a shit. Just let me get in here and let me get the hell out of wherever I came from. I'm so happy to be here. I can't wait to learn the culture. I can't wait to learn. Of course, you know, they congregate in places like Little Italy, Greek town, and things like that with other people that share a community. But the goal was always assimilation, appreciation of where you are, gratitude for the opportunity to become a part of this society. And I'm sorry, but I don't really see that sentiment on nearly that large of a scale in today's world. I work with cooks, or I worked with cooks in restaurants for many years at many different restaurants, bars, whatever. I knew more Spanish to talk to them in many cases than they knew English to speak to me. And they had been living here for like 10, 15 years. We're not talking about a guy who just got here last weekend. We're talking about people who have been living here for years on years on years. Working in restaurants where everyone around them except the other cooks is speaking English primarily. And they have not bothered. They could not be bothered to learn the language. And that's just the reality. I'm sorry. They laugh about it. I've talked to them about this. I don't think that makes for a healthy culture. I'm sorry, I don't. It's not the people, it's not the culture itself, it's the attitude, the sentiment. We live in a country now where it is considered bigotry to simply expect that the people that come into this country honor and respect and have interest in being a part of the country that they just came into. Well, guess what? I don't think that's bigoted at all. I think it's actually retarded to think otherwise. What's the opposite of bigoted? I don't know. But I can tell you once again, to think that you can have a country where it's just a large quilt washcloth of different isolated communities that have no desire whatsoever to be a part of anything outside of their community, who have, in many cases, complete disdain and contempt for the prevailing culture in this country that they are now living. And to think that that is not a recipe for the end of a civilization, you are, I don't know what the word is, but it's certainly not correct. So do with that what you will. So Death to America, I was inspired to speak on this because it's becoming so prevalent, so socially acceptable to absolutely hate this country that we almost don't even notice it anymore. And it's become such a taboo to even call people out and say, hey man, look, you came to this country. That's one of the opportunities we provide. We're happy to have you here, but you don't just get to come in and then shit on us. If I invite you to my fucking house party and you come in and immediately you walk in my house, what is up with your bathroom, dude? It sucks. Who picked that wall color? And all you got in the fridge is a Brita filter with water. You don't got any, you can just have Natty Light, no like craft beer. What the hell is this? Oh, that's your TV, dude? That's your TV? Let me sit right up in front of it because I can't see it from across the room. You can't get a bigger TV, dude? Who picked your carpets? Imagine if that's the guy that you just invited to your house. Hey man, come on through. Yeah, glad to be here, dude. This place sucks. Death to your apartment. What are you talking about, dude? I thought we were boys. You asked me if you could come over. Yeah, and by the way, I'm staying. I'm not leaving. But fuck this place. What? Dude, get the hell out. Seriously. There's a right way and a wrong way to do this. And again, even the fact that you can even do this at all is a one big, humongous point in the category of reasons why maybe Death to America isn't the greatest idea. Is that fair to say? How about this? Any place where you can actively call for the death of it and you aren't immediately threatened for your life and you're allowed to continue saying it is probably a place that shouldn't, be deathed to. Maybe. And the last rule of thumb, any place that you literally leave your entire life behind to come to, everything you knew, all the people you knew, your entire world, and it was worth leaving that to come here to start fresh. Maybe that means that this place isn't so bad. Because I'm not really aware of the reverse. I don't know how many dudes my age are tripping over themselves, leaving behind their friends and families in Baltimore County, Maryland, and leaving behind a culture where we speak English and whatever, and just tripping over themselves to go rush, to go live in Palestine. You don't really see that. There's not really droves of Americans jumping over the border into Mexico. risking life and limb for a chance to go exist in Quintana Roo or wherever. It doesn't really happen. And when you observe that on a grand scale across the board for everything, that we have a lot of importing going on of people, not a lot of exporting. That should pretty much sum up everything I'm saying, which is that, hey, say what you want. But let's remember, there's a lot of people that want to get in and not really that many people that want to get out, including the people that want this entire country to die. Couldn't help but notice, even you're not exactly tripping over yourself to get the hell out. So, moving on. But worth spending a little bit of time on that. Next up, Ben Affleck's and Jennifer Garner's daughter comes out as trans. Her name was Serafina Rose. Nice Hollywood name there. You know? I don't mind that one as far as Hollywood names go. It's good. Serafina's nice. You know, I like names that are like different, but not like ridiculous. And Serafina's good. I don't know what it means. It sounds like it is something from another language. Nobody really knows. Probably Spanish or something. But Serafina, I guess, was a girl. This always gets so confusing because it's like, how woke is this article? Because are they saying that their daughter came out as trans because it was a boy who just announced that he's a girl, and now this article is respecting his identity and calling him a girl? I'm imagining that this is what I'm thinking it is. Okay, so sporting a black pantsuit and a buzz cut hairstyle, Finn presented themselves with their new name before reciting a Bible verse to the attendees at Christ Church United Methodist in Charleston, Virginia, in West Virginia. Isn't Christchurch where that shooting happened? The Christchurch shooting? I'm imagining there's a lot of Christ churches. Christ does seem to be like the main guy of church, so it doesn't surprise me. But maybe it is the same place. I don't know. But okay, so this sounds like, okay, so she's presenting with a buzz cut and a pantsuit, and her new name is Finn. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, I was going to comment on A before I even get into this specific situation. Like, there are just like trans names. Like, there's like boy names, and then there's girl names, and then there's trans names. Like, you meet a person who converted, and their name is like Link. Like the video game guy? Finn? Like, that's a name. And now that I'm gathering it, Serafina. Okay, so Finn. Okay, she's borrowing from Serafina. Okay, so her name is Finn. Okay, that's, at least you're running with the name. I think the main takeaway here is, at your grandfather's prayer memorial, is that really the time to be doing that? And the answer is, of course, yes. The answer is, of course. How could it not ever be a good time for you to announce your gender identity? Someone's wedding, someone's just had a baby, your grandfather just died. These are all phenomenal times to announce your gender identity. And I mean that. Now, that doesn't go for all trans people, but a common thread that I've noticed. How should I say this? I think there's a difference between the I'm a girl now, I'm a boy now trans people, and the my pronouns are zim, they, them, whatever trans people. I do think there's a difference. Now, this is a distinction that we don't often make as much in popular culture. But if someone just kind of wants to convert to being a woman, I'm going to be very forthcoming here. I don't believe that you're a woman in that case. However, I am also a nice, kind person and try to be. And so I would refer to you if you want to be a she or whatever, and this is your new name, I would do that for you. You know, I wouldn't be the guy who's like, don't you mean him? Like, you know, like I wouldn't do that just because I'm not a dick, really. That's whatever. I've said this before on the show. I don't have to agree with your version of how the world works in order to validate your existence. The idea that disagreeing with someone is akin to invalidating them or not recognizing them as a human being is ridiculous. Like, if I'm a Christian and you're a Muslim, we fundamentally disagree on many aspects of morality, gender roles, how the world works, the goal of life, who God is, who the Son of God is, all these different things, all these very important things that like guide entire civilizations to what they become. And if I'm a devout Christian and you, if you're a devout Muslim, we fundamentally disagree on many of these things. But that doesn't mean that I don't think you exist or that I hate you or anything above. You know, I don't have to be a Muslim or believe in the tenets of Islam in order to recognize you as a Muslim person, as a human being. Likewise, I don't believe that I physically have to believe that gender and biological sex are two completely different things that have nothing to do with each other. It's just really a coincidence that they both are like, there's like male and female and there's boy and girl, and like just by sheer chance, all, you know, gender of man is associated with the sex of male, but like really it could be like you could be like a boyish girl. It's like I'm not even gonna try to make sense of it because there's no sense to be made of it in my opinion. It's just it's like astrology. It's like it's fan fiction kind of. It's just the theory is made up. It really is. It's made up. But if you want to identify as that thing, that's fine. Where I draw the line typically is when you insist that I believe in your version of how things work. Because now you're invalidating my existence. I mean, I don't agree with your gender theory. I don't agree with it. That doesn't mean I dislike you as a person. It just means I don't agree with your version of how things work. And therefore, I don't want your version of how things work being pushed in education or anything like that because I don't believe it's actually true in any scientific way. It's an ideology. And you're more than welcome to have your ideology. But we don't teach Christianity in public schools for that same reason. And so I don't understand why we need to teach your ideology in public schools or anywhere else. But again, that type of trans person is fine with me. But when it gets to the point where it's the whole like, my pronouns are they, them, or my pronouns are ZZ or whatever, I'm just going to call it like it is. There's an element of narcissism there. And by an element, I mean, like, that's narcissism. It's very self-indulgent. It just is. To demand that every single person you meet on a daily basis must first know that you don't conform to some binary of genders in this heteronormative, cisnormative society, and that, like, you're used to existing on a daily basis using pronouns he, she, it, whatever, they, we, you, me, all these pronouns. But like, no, when you talk to me, you have to change your entire language just to effectively communicate with me. In fact, if you don't change your entire way of speaking, Not only am I asking you to compromise your ideology potentially if you don't believe in my identity, but most polite people will look over that and go, okay, fine, whatever. But now it's not enough for me to just tolerate your identity and just accept it for what it is and move past it and call you what you want to be called, a man or woman. Now I have to change my actual language. I have to change how I talk to you. And this is everyone in the room's job as soon as you walk into a party. Okay, what do I need to, what pronouns do you, it's very self-involved. I could not imagine expecting anyone, much less people I don't know, but anyone really, to change their lives and how they interact with me on that deep of a level in like a casual, regular situation. And that's what goes on all the time. And so the fact, going back to this original topic at hand, the fact that their daughter, now son, whatever, their daughter, who is now a boy because he gave a 10-minute speech, probably less, probably 3-minute speech at his grandfather's funeral. So now that is, of course, what makes you a boy. You just have to simply deliver a speech at a relative's funeral, and now you're a boy. It used to be like, XY chromosomes, things like that. That's all fake science. Genetics, biology, hormones, DNA. That's bogus, antiquated, fake science. The real science suggests that what makes you a male is if you say you're a male at your grandfather's funeral and have a buzz cut and a pantsuit. That is, after looking deep into it, scientists have confirmed that is the actual definition of a male. So, but it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that this is how he went about it. Because again, and of course, their pronouns are they, them. And this is my new name. Hey guys, I know you've known me for 15 years, my entire life, most of you. You have to call me by this name now. I'm no longer a girl. I'm a boy now, but I'm not really actually a boy. I'm a boy, but my pronouns are they, them. So I'm actually a them, and you dare not use either gendered pronoun when referring to me. And so just, if anybody needs me to repeat that, if you need to take notes, and, rest in peace, Grandpa. Like, that just goes right in alignment with everything else I said. And I'm sure this happens all the time. Last but not least, I did say I was going to touch a little bit into Budgie's comment of aliens and what they potentially may look like. Now, again, I lost the comment, but if I recall, he was basically saying that aliens could be information or information could be aliens. This is all based off of yesterday's video on Twitter Tuesday. We looked at, one of the articles we looked at was in the 70s in Mississippi, 2 men claimed to have been abducted by aliens while fishing off the Pascagoula River. And they were brought into the police. They went into the police station. The police didn't believe them, so they left him in a room with a secret recording device. And the men were like sitting there talking about it, not knowing they were being recorded, just like describing how scary it was and everything, which made the police be like, "Damn, are they like we're not in the room? They're like totally keeping up with the story. They're really talking about it." So like the question is, then they claimed that these aliens had like robot slit mouths and crab-like pincers for hands or whatever. And I, while wanting to believe this story because I don't understand people that don't want things like this to be true, I don't understand people that want the world to be more boring. Like, those people that like, just whenever you suggest anything that could be cool and fun, like about like, they just immediately shut it down. Like, yeah, right, dude. Like, yeah, you really think this? Like, I mean, why not? Why can't I think that maybe people can get abducted by aliens? Why are you so intent on living in the most boring version of our existence? I don't understand that. It doesn't make you like smarter. It just makes you less imaginative. But I ultimately decided that I didn't believe this story because I didn't really like their description of the aliens. That's not how I wanted aliens to look, because we all have our own version of what we think an alien looks like, and mine doesn't have a robot slit mouth and crab-like pincers. Just doesn't. Now, of course, this was the 70s, as I said yesterday, so that could have been the style back then, because it wasn't just the 70s for us, it was the 70s for them. So maybe that was the thing back then. We had sideburns, they had robot slit mouths. We had disco, they had crab pincers. I don't know. 70s aliens. But Budgie made a good point. And he said aliens could be information, or information could be the aliens. And that when we get like an idea or something, that could be, maybe it didn't actually originate with us, but it was given to us by the aliens via information. Now, that sounds like a very far out, groovy 70s alien theory. But I understand what you're saying. In the past, a couple weeks ago, I wanted to talk about, I'm not going to get too involved with it today. Perhaps later this week I will. But for the time being, suffice to say that I did, on Physics Friday, want to delve into higher dimensions, consciousness, and particularly how our consciousness actually interacts with the physical world itself, and how our consciousness actually dictates the physical world, which is scientifically being more and more proven every day. It's not just a woo-woo thing to say. It's like actually a thing. And also what people mean when we say time is the fourth dimension, and what do we mean by dimensions at all? To put it in shorthand, we exist in a three-dimensional spatial realm with fourth dimension. We don't perceive it as a spatial dimension like we do with the first three. You have your three spatial dimensions. You can go forward, backward, you can go left, right, or you can go up, down. That's like the only directions you can think of. You can't think of another direction that can't be mapped on that three-dimensional plane. A little bit up, a little bit to the side, a little bit back. Like anything, any direction you want to pinpoint in the universe, in our 3D universe, can be mapped using those three spatial dimensions. But Einstein, and ever since Einstein, we've always looked at time as the quote-unquote fourth dimension. And my perception of that has always been, and I will delve into this on later shows, I promise, because it's one of my favorite topics. We just don't have time to go whole hog in it today. But my perception of that is we exist in a three-dimensional segment, a three-dimensional snippet of a four-dimensional world, a four-dimensional universe. Meaning that every single moment is like a 3D snapshot. And if you were to actually zoom out into that higher dimension and observe the four-dimensional reality, it would be all those snippets of three-dimensional space as one whole thing. So your four-dimensional form, your three-dimensional form is you right now in this moment. But your four-dimensional form is every single moment that you have existed all at once. So your four-dimensional shape is everything you ever were and ever will be. Because we're experiencing the fourth dimension, aka time, as moments, one by one, like a cartoon book. Each page is a new snapshot, and we experience time snapshot by snapshot. But if you were to zoom out and see the cartoon book as a whole, you'd see that every single one of those snapshots already exists. And it's just a matter of you experiencing them page by page as this animated thing, as a sequence of events that have all perhaps already occurred. I say all that to get back to the idea of higher dimensions and the idea that our brains are only capable of perceiving 3 dimensions of space and the 4th dimension as a sequence of 3-dimensional space. But there could be dimensions even above that. In fact, if you go into string theory and higher physics, quantum physics, these are all theorized and these are all, commonly held theories of higher dimensions that are completely imperceptible. We can't perceive in the same way that we can't perceive in the four-dimensional entirety of all of space-time and instead must experience it as individual moments of 3-dimensional space over time. There may be entire aspects of our reality that we are completely not tuned into, that we cannot perceive on any conscious level, that maybe we do perceive subconsciously. I mean, right now, there's all kinds of radio waves and frequencies. Every radio station you've ever listened to, it's going through the air right now, the T-wave waves, Wi-Fi, all these things, and the only way that you actually tune in and perceive it is by tuning your radio to that frequency. But it's not like that frequency stops existing when you tune to another frequency. It's always there. You just don't perceive it. So what exists out there constantly all around us that our little brain antenna is completely incapable of consciously tuning into? Yet, however, it's there. Could there be entire beings, perhaps, like I was saying yesterday, that exist wholly outside of our 3-dimensional perception? Could there be life forms that are literally imperceptible, that we experience, like Budgie says, as, well, he says information, but that we keep picturing aliens or these, other life forms as these like kind of just weird bastardized versions of ourselves, like us, but green with bigger eyes. And it's like, no, dude, there's no saying that our perception of life or our perception of reality is the only existing version of life or reality. In fact, I would argue that the evidence is much more to the contrary. That the universe is a lot more like the things we don't understand than the things we do. And assuming that's the case, we could be influenced, and there could be entire realms of the universe that exist 100% out of our perception. In higher dimensions, this could be what the religions have spoken of with spirit realms or heaven or hell, or I don't know. There's a whole lot of possibilities when you attempt to consider all of these ideas, not just through the lens of religion or mythology, but if you incorporate these ideas like God says, let there be light. What was their fascination with light? Why light? And why is it a coincidence that light also so happens to be the speed of light is what all time and space is based around, that time and space are relative, time changes, space stretches, but light is always the same. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. If you try to delve into we always sit here and some of us smoke a little weed and we go, yeah, man, and like the ancients just understood something that like we might have lost and blah, blah, blah. We're trying to catch it. And it's like, okay, well, let's run with that same energy. You look at these stories that were written thousands of years ago that were based off of something, some type of fundamental understanding that these people had. They were able to do unbelievable things compared to what we would assume they would have been able to do with the technology that they had access to at the time. The pyramids are a great example of that. So the Mayan calendars, like how did they know these things? Why did they know these things? Assuming that it wasn't a complete patchwork of guesses and dumb luck, you have to believe that there's something that they thought that's worth listening to. And that perhaps, as I say a lot on this podcast, the podcast is weekly, the show is daily. Science and religion do not have to be at odds with each other. That is the great mistake of our time, is that we have people that have decided that science and religion are at odds with each other, that religion disproves science or science disproves religion, when all throughout history, philosophy, religion, science, they were all part of the same thing. We were trying to figure out the universe. And I think that when you go into the higher levels of science and understand the most fundamental concept, which is nobody can tell us how something came from nothing, and nobody can tell us why there's anything at all. Why does anything exist at all? That question remains unanswered in science. And we're discovering more and more about consciousness, that consciousness itself, again, actually interacts with the universe to create the physical universe, that reality, local reality, isn't actually real. These are amazing things. These aren't made up things. These are scientifically proven things that I can't recommend enough that you look into. Because the more you understand science, the more you understand religion wasn't that far off. If anything, it was just a easy version of what we're discovering through science every day. And that includes the idea of other realms, other dimensions, higher dimensions, beings that are imperceptible and do not exist in our conscious perception, in our dimensions, that could very well still be influencing our existence. These are all interesting things, I think. And again, if you're one of those people who prides themselves on being the most boring version of yourself and wants to shoot that down, and no, there's no such thing as that. Life just simply has to be the most boring version. Then suit yourself. Continue living in your boring universe. I'm having a great time in this one. Folks, before I leave, just want to make you aware of a couple bonuses available for the ROOK Look. FanDuel is offering a 30% live boost on the Miami Marlins New York Yankees game tonight. It's very early in the baseball season. I'm still actually, or should be, in the process of developing a working system model to predict baseball games. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not. But in the meantime, I mean, look, all these boosts are positive EV. So, just I'm making you aware of these boosts, and that I can tell you that if you are applying these profit boosts to your bets, it is profitable in the long term. It is. And we can sit down at another time and I'll explain to you exactly why that is. But for now, you're just going to take my word for it and take a bet for it. So, I don't know, Miami versus New York. Yankees are doing really well this year, which annoys me to no end. I'll probably just bet on the Marlins run line, but we're not going to count that as part of the ROOK Look. Do what you want. I'm just making you aware that exists. Another thing to be aware of that exists is a NHL 25% boost on MGM. I know nothing about hockey. There's very few things in the world that I care about less than hockey. But I do like making money, and I do like positive EV bets. And so if you agree, then go ahead and apply that MGM 25% NHL boost on any bet and, enjoy. Also on MGM, there is a 50% boost. I can't remember if it's specific for the Major League Baseball games or just for any boost. But obviously I want to apply this to baseball because the Orioles are playing tonight. My friends and I, we call this O's tax. That is where we just bet on the Orioles to win every day. And last year that was very profitable because we surprised a lot of people. This year it might not be as profitable because people are going to be less surprised that we're doing well. People expect us to do well this year. So the odds will reflect that. But with a 50% profit boost, the Orioles are playing the Red Sox in Boston at Fenway tonight at 7-ish. Last I checked, they were minus 105 for the money line. So very, very, very slight underdogs. We're talking like 49 to 51% underdogs, like pretty much 50-50.
But with that 50% profit boost, it's a great deal. So I went ahead and maxed out that one for the Orioles money line versus the Red Sox this evening. Outside of that, folks, happy betting, happy pondering. There's a lot to think about today from today's show. And we will see you tomorrow here on Live from the Studio. Remember this daily show with yours truly, Jimmy Selesky, every Monday through Friday at 6:30 p.m. And the LFTS podcast with myself and Eric Glazer comes at you every Saturday morning. That's 6 days a week, fresh new content. Throw us a like, throw us a comment, subscribe so you can see when we put out new content. It's the best way to do anything in life, really. Subscribe. Till next time, folks. Peace.